right. Okay. So when I'm talking about agility, these are the principles, and I should add as a caveat, Agile is a very big community, so is business agility, and what I'm sharing with you today is most definitely my point of view and my perspective. It's not universal. I can at least share a few Agilists disagreeing with some of these principles, but this is what I mean when I say we're pursuing agility at an organizational level. First and foremost is recognize that we know the least when we're starting anything, a project, a product, a new initiative. It's so tempting to think that when we don't know something, we should have a plan. With both Agile and agility, the idea is we know the least when we're starting, so let's not plan too much detail. Let's have a high-level plan based on what we now know, and recognize the plan is going to change as we know more. Part of the Agile Manifesto says responding to change over following a plan. Very true. And because we know the least when we're starting, go broad before going deep applies. That means think about the end result that you want and less about how we get there. So if you're using travel as an example, it helps to know your starting point and your end point, but you don't have to know right now if you're going to fly or drive, or even more specifically, which kind of car we're going to rent and which route we're going to take. All of those things can be figured out when the time is right. To start off with, focus on what matters, which is the outcome. MVP stands for minimal viable product. I often use it as a shorthand to think about what matters. Because we know little, we're starting a new thing, trying to make everything perfect, pursuing perfection really doesn't work. Being good enough is really one of the hallmarks of agility. Let's do something. If it's working, let's do the next thing. If it's working, keep going. If it's not working, change. So if it's good enough, 80-20 or MVP, however you phrase it, that concept really applies. Don't make perfection the enemy of the possible. Pretty straightforward, I think. Time boxing is the attribute of Agile, I think, that most people recognize. So Scrum uses 2 to 4 week time boxes. The length of the time box matters less, other than generally aim for shorter rather than longer. But having a time box where we look back at what we did, how we did it, looking at, are we still going the right way? The inspect and adapt portion is really, really important. And you have to have time boxing for that. Feedback loops. When we say we don't know much when we start, we're going to learn more, right? That's our feedback loop. Who are we going to learn more from? Our team members, our partners, suppliers, customers, whoever is going to be involved with our effort, they're going to give us feedback. So do we have both the time and the channel for those feedback loops to come back to us? Are we taking those feedback? Are we actually reading through, understanding it, and making changes based on that feedback? I would argue that if you have not changed anything in your process or your outcome based on feedback, then probably not very effective feedback loops. So that's a rule of thumb generally. The other principles that I do want to emphasize is, again, small actions. When you don't know in new domains, when we don't have all the answers, smaller steps are easier to pivot. Big plans mean more waste usually. Learn to fail fast. When we don't know, we make some assumptions. We fail. Failure is very, very much part of any organizational change in the Agile mindset. But learn to fail fast sooner so you can adapt. That means do risky things up front rather than postponing risky things. Generally speaking, when you know least about something, that's going to be the most riskiest thing. Try experiments based on that. Experiments simply mean what are small things that we can do to validate the thing that we think we know. And then as we continue, the assumption is validated, build upon that. What is the next assumption we can make about this? And ultimately, all Agile or agility efforts should be based on the reality of human behavior, because Agile is pretty simple. People are more complex. And successful Agile efforts recognize that we are working with and for people. How we make decisions, how we think, what we know, what we think we know. All of those things are reality of humanity, and we have to take those factors into account as we are planning, doing, validating any efforts. So that's kind of a very broad set of attributes, but these are kind of when I say agility, these are the kind of concepts I'm talking about. I think there's a lot of variation in wording, and that's totally fine. But if you're doing most of these things, and however and whatever you're doing, you're working in a way that is agile and is a hallmark of agility.